I am a hetero... Sorry. I am a hetero... Okay, this is gonna work. Probably because you wouldn't believe it. You shouldn't believe it, and I'd be mad if you did. Probably because it's the farthest thing from the truth, and every person I've ever met my entire life has known this. I came out of a glass closet to resounding, yeah, we knows. And I'm sure there are gay people in my audience who have had the same experience. That during their lives, their gay little lives, a stranger has looked at you and just known. Before you opened your gay mouth, before you did the gay thing with your gay hands, they just looked at you and their brain went, gay. And depending on your particular flavor of gay experience, that moment either felt like being seen for the first time or like being caught doing something you weren't doing, or at least weren't supposed to be. Both valid. This is a safe space for things that go both ways. Well, it's an essay, but still, I'm not here to judge Judy. I don't discriminate. The word for this supernatural ability is Gaydar, which yes, sounds like a Weird Al song, and maybe it is. I would know, because I have taste. But the thing it describes is a real, documented phenomenon. Phenomenon? It's real, and it has been studied by actual researchers with actual grants and actual peer-reviewed publications, and the findings are more unhinged than the glass closet door I never had to come out of. Because it turns out Gaydar isn't magic. Just like everything else, it's a measurable, replicable, and kind of cute intersection of biology, behavior, and the ancient human instinct to scan every room you walk into asking, like me? You like me? Are any of you like me? Please like me. So what is actually happening when someone clocks you? Why does it work? Why does it fail? And what does any of this say about the extremely strange experience of moving through a world where your body is apparently always narking on you? I'm Dr. Reverend Caelan Conrad, mother of faggins, and this is Fag Queen Story Hour. Pull up a plug, sit down, and let's talk about it. How do you know when someone's gay? Part 1. That can't be real. Listen, I'm a skeptic through and through. When someone says something that hits my ear wrong, like they found a cure for cancer, I think, I wonder if that's true, because it sounds false if you know anything about cures or cancer or finding things. So let's start with the skeptic's position, because it deserves a fair hearing before a jury of its queers, before we completely destroy it, before it gets gaped by our knowledge with our arguments dripping down its leg. I'm going to get demonetized. Please sign up for my Patreon. Now, the arguments I've heard against Gaydar usually go, Gaydar isn't accurate. It is just horrible stereotypes with a fun little name. You think someone is gay because they fit a mold you've learned from a homophobic media and culture. And when you're right, it's because the mold occasionally fits. And when you're wrong, you just quietly forget about it and move on with your life. They should have a word for that that thing we do. And listen, it's actually a reasonable thing to believe. It's also wrong. And we'll get to that right after we talk about the sponsor of this video. So people say Gaydar is just noticing stereotypes about the way someone speaks or walks or carries themselves. Maybe their interests. But that's wrong. And here's how wrong it is. In 2008, Nalini Ambati and her colleagues ran a study where they took 45 gay and 45 straight men's faces, stripped them down to just the face, grayscaled, white background, standardized to exactly 300 by 500 pixels, ears and hair kept, everything else removed, and flashed them at participants for durations ranging from 33 milliseconds all the way up to take as long as you want. The question was, are they gay or straight? Press the corresponding button. Participants guessed people's sexuality right with above chance accuracy, which is already a little rude, but then the researchers cut the exposure time down, shorter and shorter, until participants were seeing each face for 50 milliseconds. The result? Above chance accuracy at 50 milliseconds. 50 milliseconds! A 20th of a second. That's not even a minute. That is not enough time to think. That is not enough time to consciously notice a haircut or assess someone's relationship with moisturizer or clock any real details in a photograph. And people were still right, more than chance would predict. And kind of fucked up, giving them more time didn't help. Participants who could stare at the photo as long as they wanted were no more accurate than participants who saw it for a 20th of a second. The accuracy plateaued at 5% of a second. That's bonks. She's bonks. In another study, their Gaydar persisted even when they saw the photos upside down. The brain is not waiting for your opinion on this. It has made a snap decision and is entirely likely it's right. But it's also possible it's wrong, which is a problem for later. Let's put a plug in that, if anyone can spare their seat. Is this an innately human trait? Maybe to help people find a mate? Well, maybe, or maybe it's witchcraft, but I doubt that's all it is. In 2017, Mikhail Kosinski and Yilan Wang at Stanford took this question and handed it to an AI, because apparently trying to root out gays using gay phrenology wasn't upsetting enough, and we needed to see what a toaster would do with it. They fed the algorithm photographs of just faces, nothing else, and asked it to determine sexual orientation. I did not like their results.
We used deep neural networks to extract features from 35,326 facial images. Given a single facial image, a classifier could correctly distinguish between gay and heterosexual men in 81% of cases, and in 71% of cases for women. Human judges achieved much lower accuracy, 61% for men and 54% for women. The accuracy of the algorithm increased to 91 and 83% respectively, given 5 facial images per person.
The AI was better at reading sexual orientation than another person was. This skin job looked at your face and she said, gay, next. This was 2017, so this was not ChatGPT, but the idea of the kill yourself toaster being able to target gay people is a Black Mirror episode I do not feel like living through. Now, to be clear, this study caused an enormous amount of completely justified controversy about ethics, about privacy, about what it would mean if this technology existed in the wrong hands, which is most of them. These concerns are real and important, and the researchers themselves acknowledge them, saying, given that companies and governments are increasingly using computer vision algorithms to detect people's intimate traits, our findings expose a threat to the privacy and safety of gay men and women. And given that Futurism just reported that Madison Square Garden reportedly used facial recognition to stalk a trans woman for 2 years, I think the fears are justified. And it's exactly why this whole thing sparked a debate that is still ongoing, and frankly above the pay grade of this particular essay. And me, because I'm poor. And I have terrible grades. We are just acknowledging that the data exists and that it's, Lisa, frankly, extremely interesting. The point is, something is there. Something in a photograph of a face, something that exists faster than a thought, something that a camera and an algorithm can measure, something that's been replicated across studies and conditions and levels of exposure time. Something real is happening when they look at you and they know. So now that all that nasty little science is out of the way, let's talk about something that isn't science at all. Psychology, the science of the mind. Because this all raises the obvious follow-up question, the one that is significantly more interesting. Okay, so people can tell. Why can people tell? What can they tell? Who can they tell? What exactly are they reading? Because I know it ain't books. What is it about your face, your eyes, the specific configuration of your glorious, gorgeous, glistening gay body that outs you? What exactly is it that lets you know I'm gay? Part 2. Okay, but how, though? When it comes to science, your gay face is load-bearing. Ton visage est couvert d'un énorme charge. Let's start with the face, since that's where we finished last. Dr. Skorska out of U of T and a group of other researchers found that queer men and women each have several facial markers that serve as potential indicators of their queerness. Gay men had more convex cheeks, shorter noses, and foreheads tilted further back relative to straight men. The nose specifically tracked in the direction of heterosexual female faces. Lesbian women had noses that were more turned up, had mouths that were more puckered, had smaller foreheads, and had marginally more masculine face shapes than heterosexual women. And people were able to recognize these patterns even though they couldn't name what they were noticing. But maybe you're not convinced by photographs of real people. Maybe you're thinking something like, sure, people can read faces, but aren't they just picking up on haircuts and earrings and the forehead tattoo that says fag and the specific way someone has learned to present themselves after years of existing in gay culture? Aren't they reading performance rather than structure? Great query. Researchers thought of that too. A follow-up study took those facial metrics, the nose angles, the cheekbone geometry, the forehead measurements, and fed them into software that generated artificial 3D face models, completely synthetic faces with no cultural signals of any kind, shown to participants who were asked to judge sexual orientation on a scale of 1 to 7. Overall accuracy came in at 74%, above chance. On fake faces that have never belonged to a person, never existed in a culture, never made a choice about how to present themselves to the world. Literally just geometry. The number Skorska's team identified extruded into a face shape and placed in front of a human being who then correctly identified what those numbers meant. And when researchers varied the parameters in equal steps, nudging the face incrementally from one end of the scale to the other, participant ratings followed. The more the face was adjusted towards the gay structural profile, the higher it was rated. Pretty consistently, which is like wild. Obviously, it's not every gay person, and it's not guaranteed, just like how not every person is guaranteed to be gay. It is a statistical tendency that shows up consistently enough across studies that enough researchers keep finding it and then having to figure out what to do with that information. But the load the face bears in Gaydar is just the beginning, even if it is a huge load. Because then there's the voice. We've all heard the voice, and I just did an entire video on this because it's fucking Pride Month, and you should watch it because it's amazing. But I will add something here. Researchers can put your voice on a spectrogram, a visual map of sound, and see how gay it is in a measurable way. Your voice is not just telling on you to other people, it is telling on you to software. But I guess that's the thing about voices. They're always telling things. But if you want more, you'll need to watch the video on that shit because it's legitimately wild. Next, we have the walk. Of course, there's a gait study. Someone asked themselves, they said, self, can people tell someone is gay from the way they walk? And said, yes, I would like a grant for this. I'm so tired of all this gatekeeping. And received one. And the answer was also yes. In this study, participants judged dynamic outlines of real people, men and women, both gay and straight, in which body shape and motion were measured. Again, gender atypical body motion affected perceived sexual orientation and, importantly, affected accuracy as well. Gay men on average show more hip sway. Gay women on average show less. And observers watching people walk across the room, doing nothing, simply existing while in motion, could identify sexual orientation with above chance accuracy based on movement alone. She was right, you know. Shakira. The hips don't lie. The hips will out you faster than Perez Hilton. So we've got the face, the voice, the walk, the way you inhabit space and move through it and present yourself in it without consciously doing anything at all. And at this point, the obvious question is, why? Why would all of these things cluster together? Why would sexual orientation come packaged with a whole constellation of physical and behavioral traits? And the answer, or at least the most compelling answer researchers currently have, is, much like everything, it's all women's fault. Sorry, I was raised Catholic. I was told that everything bad is the fault of a woman's disgusting need to know things a man didn't want her to. Like, if she was naked, and should snakes talk? And anyway, thanks to that McRib, childbirth now hurts. But some researchers posit that before childbirth, inside the womb juice makes you gay like this. Like with prenatal hormone exposure. A leading theory is that exposure to androgens during fetal development informs not just sexuality, but a whole caboodle of traits simultaneously. Maybe some people believe everyone is indoctrinated into being gay from media, but watching a gay show on Netflix isn't going to change the slant of your forehead. I don't know what I believe. I don't know if this is all just a hilarious coincidence. I don't know why my forehead angle is so gay. But I do know that I learned to swish as soon as I learned to walk. The way you walk and the way your face is structured and the melody of your voice and who you want to take home from the party to rail, these things may not be unrelated. The body, it turns out, is not a collection of parts working independently, but an integrated system, and that system was shaped before you slithered out into this world. You didn't decide to walk gay. You just walk how you walk and it's gay as hell. And when people say that queers aren't a visible minority, that we can just stay in the closet if we don't want to deal with discrimination, they're lying to themselves and you. Because they know they know. Not always, and not 100%, but often. Now, if this were the whole story, we'd be done. A lot of stories end when they're complete. Gaydar is real, yet imperfect. Biology explains it. Everyone get out of my house. But here's the thing. Gaydar fails. It's not a perfected technology. There's still some bugs we're working out. A lot. And the why of the how it fails tells you almost as much as the why of the how it works. Part 3. This is failin' gay. Okay, so we've established that Gaydar is real. It's sometimes biological. It operates faster than the speed of thought. Your hips have been narking on you behind your back since before you could walk, and a Stanford AI can clock you with 81% accuracy from a photograph alone. Love it. Deeply normal information that doesn't worry me at all. But here's what worries me more. It's often just wrong. It seems that almost all Gaydar is based on reading masculinity and femininity and who had more or less of each. It is tied to gender norms and sex, which are social constructs that are culturally informed. Trying to identify how masculine someone is when they're from a culture with a wholly different definition of masculinity muddies the murky waters. Masculinity and femininity are not fixed points, they move. What counts as gender-typical male behavior in one era is gender atypical in another. Men wearing makeup, men being emotionally expressive, men taking care of their appearance, men having opinions about interior design, men lending other men a helping handy. All of these things have been gay signals in certain cultural contexts and completely unremarkable straight behavior in others. The biological signal is sitting underneath all of this, but it keeps getting filtered through a cultural lens that changes every 20 years. This is why the extremely masked gay man exists. This is why the extremely femme straight man exists. This is why your gaydar occasionally looks a person dead in the face and lies to you and probably enjoys it and can't wait to do it again. Because they're not gay. They're French. But possibly the most revealing failure about what gaydar actually is and what it actually does is what happens with bisexual people. Bisexual people are systematically, consistently, and almost impressively excluded from studies about gaydar, which means that what we've been calling the science of gaydar is just as limited as it sounds. We have a whole spectrum of sexualities and genders, and this is really good most of the time at detecting like 2. Sorry, bisexual people. Science has been doing this to you since the beginning. And then there's the deeply human and deeply problematic aspect of a little thing I like to call confirmation bias. And I like to call it that because that's what it's called is. You remember the times your gaydar was right. You clock someone, you're right. It feels like a superpower. You tell the story of how you knew the host was a mo from the first word at every party for the next 3 years because you're boring and kind of homophobic, and that's the only confirmed gay you've ever seen in the wild. What we often do not remember are the times we were wrong. Like, not hit on someone and we were wrong, but just thought, he's probably gay, and it turns out he wasn't. He just likes theater. The accuracy studies that we talked about in part 1 are designed specifically to eliminate the possibility of your brain doing its little selective memory trick. Real life is not controlled. Of course it fails sometimes. It was always going to fail sometimes. I think it's wild that it works as often as it does, given everything it's working against. So here's what we know. gaydar is real. It's documented, replicated, measurable. It operates in 50 milliseconds on a photograph of a face. It lives in voices and jaw lines and the specific sway of a walk across a room. The swish of a gay hip can create a hurricane in Japan. It was shaped before you were born and packaged into a bundle of traits that travel together through a life, and has been broadcasting on a frequency that other people are picking up on, even if they can't explain why. It is also culturally compromised, systematically bad at bisexual people, filtered through a generational lens that expires every 15 years, and subject to confirmation bias. It is, in other words, both more real and more limited than anyone who uses the word casually has probably stopped to consider. Which is fine. That's true of most things that matter. Which brings us to the thing that all 3 of these failure modes are actually pointing at. The thing underneath the cross-cultural confusion in the bisexual erasure and the confirmation bias. Gaydar is not really about accuracy. For queers, it's about survival. It is about that ancient and persistent search for people like you, for your people. The 50 millisecond scan that your nervous system runs on every face in every room asking the same question it has always been asking. Are you one of mine? Are you safe? Are you our fourth? If I let my guard down around you, will I regret it? That question predates the word gay. It predates the concept. It is just the human animal trying to find its people in a room full of strangers using every imperfect tool it has. And if you are very gay, then you know what it feels like when it works. When someone clocks you and you clock them back, and then there's that half second of recognition across the room, that small silent acknowledgement that passes between 2 people who have been running the same background process and just got the same result. It doesn't always lead anywhere. Sometimes it's just a nod or a look. That's not nothing. That's actually amazing to me. It works just enough to feel like a superpower. It fails just enough to keep you humble. Much like I imagine a superpower would. I have a horror audio drama coming out this year that takes the real dangers of AI grooming and pushing people to hurt themselves or others, and forces people to examine if they be so dismissive of it if it were a person causing the harm. It's called Welcome to Isaiah, and the crowdfunding for it went amazing. And you should follow the channel on YouTube and social media so you can stay up to date when it's released. We just dropped episode 0. People seem to like it. Watch the trailer, subscribe, leave a comment. I'm writing it with the co-writer of this video, who is from the channel Brona is Gay, who just released an amazing video about the unhinged got milk ads from the 90s. Apparently, I don't know if you've heard, the economy is like bad. I've had like $400 in patrons leave this year because they can't afford it. And I don't remove them from the Discord or anything because rude, but it does eat into my ability to eat. So if the economy isn't killing you specifically, please sign up for my Patreon. I'm working on a few investigations, so if you want to follow along with those and get secret information not available anywhere else, you can sign up for a membership on Patreon or YouTube and see them happening live on my members' Discord. Please do. Like, actually, my tax bill is going to kill me. I think I might just walk into the ocean. Sharing this video to your mom or your boss would really help. So after liking and subscribing, do me a huge favor and do that. Check out my podcast, Respect the Dead, where we talk shit about dead people who sucked. Like Fred Christ Trump, Charlie Kirk, Elon Musk's granddaddy, the racist who made Dilbert, and sex offender Coco the gorilla. But this month, June, we're doing gay people who didn't suck. And we're doing double the episodes. Matthew Shepard, Sylvia Rivera, Howard Ashman, and a surprise. I also have merch. It's cute as hell. Look at it. Something tells me you look so good in it. Bear my load. Bearing shirt and hat. I'll see you in the next one, and I'll know if you're gay.